Hi guys, and welcome to the finger motion technique tutorial. If you're looking to improve your single stroke rolls, gain more control with your fingers, or develop faster hands, this is the right video for you. In this tutorial we'll cover how to hold the stick properly to develop finger control, the correct body motion and hand positioning for effective finger technique, how to develop and apply the finger motions on the sticks, how to start and stop comfortably using only your fingers, how to build speed, endurance and dynamics using finger control, and finally I'll show you workouts and exercises to make your finger technique more comfortable, confident, fast and natural in your hands. We will be doing free body exercises, regular sticks exercises, and also heavy sticks exercises. So grab the heavier pair of sticks that you can find and let's get started. First, I wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. In case you haven't heard of me, my name is James Payne and I've been developing instructional drum methods for many years, driven by a deep passion for drumming and education. Over the past 10 to 15 years, I've had the privilege of teaching hundreds of students around the world. In addition to teaching, I've contributed to a biomechanic research project in France at the University of Nantes, focused on analyzing leg movement, ankle motion and posture while playing drums, an experience that has deeply informed my approach to technique and performance. As a touring musician, I've performed with some of the most influential bands in the metal and death metal scene and had the honor of playing on many of the world's most prominent festivals and stages. If you're curious about my instructional methods, you can find everything on my website jamespaynedrums.com. If you like this video, my content or my teaching method, don't forget to subscribe and let me know in the comment below your thoughts or what you think about it by putting a like. As you know, that always helps. Now back to the video. So for me, the first step that always creates a little bit more problems when having to develop the finger motion from scratch is to actually deal with the rebound of the stick and in holding the stick. So even before jumping into developing the finger motion, my first step is to learn how to deal with the rebound by only holding and controlling the stick with my fingers. Because when we will develop the finger motion, one of the characteristics is that you will use more the tips of the finger, or the grip will be more towards the tips of the fingers, where there is less strength. You don't want to create tension, so you don't want to get the habit of tensing up the fingers when the stick hits the surface. And you have the stick less inside your hand, and so you have less surface of the hand dealing with the rebound. So the first step for me, it's always to deal with the rebound, to get used to the rebound by developing a free stroke approach, which means that I don't want the stick, like my fingers, to hold the stick like tight when I'm doing this, but I want to stay synchronized with the stick. This might look like a step that is far away from the end results, the end goal of developing fast, maybe fast finger technique control, but it's what stops most drummers like to get to the next level with speed. They either start to tense up after a comfortable speed, or it's hard to kind of like jump right into the finger motion technique, because the first impact kind of like tends to create tension in our fingers. Instead, if we get used to this approach, we will be synchronized with the stick from the very first stroke, and we then have to just control it. But we don't create tension in the impact and then, have to release that tension while we're doing other things and playing on different surfaces maybe and stuff like that. So for this reason, my first approach is to work on holding the stick in this way. So keeping my hand natural as much as possible, I just turn it, right? And wherever my thumb and my finger end, I put the stick straight, like perpendicular to my body, right? So it's straight. My hand is straight and the stick is straight, and then from here I just land. I start from a vertical position like this, and then I go back into the initial position. And one thing that I want here is to avoid tensing up the fingers, and I want the stick to work straight as possible. I want it to go down and land straight and come back straight. And in this way I develop you know, the free strokes. So literally like a synchronization with the stick. Of course, we want to do the same thing for both hands. Feel comfortable. And already here, we might feel like holding the stick towards the third joint of the index might be one thing, and holding it in the second joint of the index finger might be a different thing. And so we can start, you know, figuring out these little details at this level already, which again, it's very important for the next steps. Okay, so because if you're then thinking of the next strokes, you will have to deal with this step of hitting the surface and then just kind of like make sure that the stick is bouncing straight, and then you kind of carry on only controlling it with the fingers. So this is my first step, and it's a free stroke approach, but only holding the stick with the fingers, and it's to get synchronized to the sticks for the very first impact. A very useful thing is to do the same thing, but with very heavy sticks. These are aluminum sticks, they're very heavy. And I do that a lot because the heavier the sticks, the more I will feel if I am blocking the rebound, if I feel any type of like contrast with the stick, the weight of the stick will let me know immediately that I am working against it. I'm not working with the full rebound, but it's going to feel like, you know, a lot of tension and a lot of pressure because they're way heavier. And heavy sticks will be one of the tools that I will be using to develop the finger technique exactly for this reason. Because the more I can deal with the weight, so the less I feel actually the weight of the stick, the better. The more it means that I'm synchronized with the rebound and with the stick, and I'm not forcing anything or creating tension that blocks the flow of the rebound and the motion of the fingers. So heavy sticks are very useful to develop this type of technique, not because we want to strengthen our muscles, but because we want to feel the force and the weight of the rebound as much as possible so that we can synchronize to it and we can actually remove the work. So I don't want to feel the stick heavy, I want to feel it as light as possible. And this is exactly what I feel here. And this is why I can play faster and with good dynamics without tensing up, no matter if the sticks are very heavy, even if the sticks are very heavy. Of course, with regular sticks, then it'll be even easier because still the weight will be a factor in speeding up because you are moving more mass and more weight. So we're not going to actually apply this and you know, develop other like the more application part of the finger technique with these sticks, but in the development of the motion itself, it will be a very useful tool. Great, so once we get comfortable with the free stroke approach and we start to have a better idea of how the hand should behave and should act when there's the impact, and we don't instinctively choke the stick or, you know, wrap our fingers around the sticks to keep control, but we are able to keep the natural position of the hand. As you can see, my hand, it's not changing its natural position here. Of course, I have the stick inside the hand, so it's not going to be exactly the same because I have to keep, you know, in mind the stick. But I'm not changing, the stick is not moving sideways. Everything is pretty straight. My hand is in a natural position, the stick is working straight. So once we get to, you know, have a comfortable approach with this free stroke, we want to start understanding one thing. First of all, you can use finger motion both in French grip and in German grip, right? So my choice for using the finger motion is always more in a French side, because doing this, it's a better option for me than doing this. Doing this is less natural. The index finger has a hard time to, move a lot because it's creating tension here. While if I just turn the thumb a little bit upward, everything becomes more comfortable. And so I feel the stick more in control in the hand. And so that's my choice. But you can actually develop, finger motions also in German grip. And the concepts, I will show it more in a French grip, but you can apply the concepts and adjust the concepts also for the German grip. So if you see my position and say, but I can also do it in a different way, the thumb should be sideways, no, it's a different grip, and grips are not techniques, and I see a lot of confusion on this thing. Grip is how you hold the stick. Technique is, the sequence of motions you develop in a specific grip. So some people call this the push and pull, or the open close. It doesn't matter, but that's a technique. And you can do this in French grip or in German grip, right? You can use finger technique in French grip, or finger technique in German grip. So grips are different than technique. So it doesn't matter if you're doing it one way or the other. Both are okay as long as you do it in the correct way. So conceptually, you can apply the finger technique in both German and French. You would just have to adjust, the differences in the positions inside the hand. Sorry for the interruption. This will be super quick. If you're into this episode, you can find full lessons, breakdowns, and workouts for this exact topic on my website. Just use the code at checkout for a great discount. All right, back to the video. So the first step here that we have to understand, and this is how I approach every time I develop a technique. This is my approach. I start from the basic motions without the gear, and then I see how my body moves and how it should move, and then I add the external forces. And usually, like sometimes it's the pedal and the spring. In this case, it's going to be the stick and the rebound. So we want to keep the natural positions of the hand as much as possible, even when we're holding the sticks. This is because the more we keep the natural positions of the hand, the less activation we have in the muscles, so the more relaxed our starting point will be, which is a very important thing for technique, to keep the muscles as deactivated as possible. But also, it'll give us a reference for accuracy, right? So if I'm always kind of like staying in the natural position, so I follow the design of my body, I will always end up in the same spots, right? On the snare or wherever. Like when we move around, things will change because there's a lot of, you could be here, 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 and so things can move around, but you have a starting point that is going to be always the same. Instead, if you have already like your elbows open, you could be open here, here, like it could change, and accuracy gets affected because then you might, need the sticks. You might change something in the hands, and then because of this, the wrist is a little bit rotated, so you rotate the hand in a weird way. So all these details can be avoided just by staying as close as possible in our natural positions, like as much as possible in our natural positions. Okay, so if I start with my right hand and I just raise the hand, I see that naturally this is what my German position would be. And then I turn my hand and it naturally kind of like gets in this position. So I see one thing, the thumb, first of all, it's a straight thumb. It's not going, if I do this, I already have an activation. I already have a constant contraction in the thumb. Instead, I want to keep the thumb as deactivated as possible. And then I see how the rest of my hand will, position. Everybody has longer or shorter fingers and different things. So everybody will have a little bit of a different situation, but more or less we all have, the hand is structured in the same way. So we more or less have the same thing happening here. And then from here, I will have to think, so dividing always the motion from the grip. We're talking about the grip in this specific case. I want to keep the stick as, straight and in line as possible with the forearm and the thumb, but also that will work straight on its own. So exactly as it was happening here, we want the same situation here, where my hand, it's in a natural position and the stick is working as straight as possible. These are the two elements that I pay attention to constantly while I'm developing this motion. Because if I see the stick starting to work sideways, it's not a good sign. I need the stick to work as straight as possible because it's a more efficient motion for the stick. Up and down, straight forward, it's more efficient than a rounded motion or like a weird motion, because it means that every time the stick is bouncing, it's bouncing back somewhere else and I have to control it, which means I have to activate muscles to control it or change the position or whatever. And sometimes we end up in these positions. This is just because instead of fixing the grip inside our hand, like here, we don't change anything here, but we fix it here, activating the shoulder, activating the elbow, and creating a lot of constant tension, which is not physically efficient, it's not ergonomic, it's not convenient. So instead of ending up doing things like this, I want the body to be in a natural position from the shoulder as much as possible. And then if I end up with the stick in this way, I can change the position of the stick inside the hand and just find another reference. Maybe I have the stick too much towards the tip of the finger and I need to put it a little bit more inside the hand, or the other way around. Maybe it's too much inside the hand and so I'm doing this and I need to put it a little bit more on the tip of the finger. But it's better to change and adjust things inside the hands as much as possible so that we can keep the position of the body as natural as possible and so relaxed, rather than ending up, all this tension will end up in blocking muscles and blocking and creating other tension in other areas. So the least we can modify our body and stay more in the natural positions, the better. Because on top of this, then we will have to also change surface and it'll become a lot of work. Maybe we activate the back, maybe we have pain in the upper part of the back or whatever, because of all this tension that we're creating here. Grip, body position as natural as possible, stick working as straight as possible, and let's try to adjust as much as possible the stick here and the rotation of the wrist too, right? If we end up doing this, we might need to turn the hand a little bit upside so that the stick stays more inside the hand. If we end up like this, then we might need to turn the hand a little bit, the thumb a little bit on the other side so that the stick doesn't constantly get too much in our hand and we can kind of like straighten by rotating the wrist, straighten the stick, how the stick is traveling. Okay, so keeping this part as relaxed as possible and then avoiding weird rotation or adjusting the stick as much as possible in this area will be a very good starting point for us to at least try to fix things as we're going. If we see like we're losing control, we already have a few options. Let's try to change the fulcrum point a little bit, or where the stick is, staying on our index finger. Let's make sure it's staying with our thumb as much as possible, and the rotation of the wrist. Okay, a very good exercise that we can do to also kind of force the stick to stay in line with our hand and in the right position is to hold the stick with index and thumb and just bounce it with the pinky finger. Okay? By doing this, we will kind of like, the only way that the stick will stay, that we can bounce the stick comfortably will be to have the stick in line in the correct position with the hand. And so from here, once this is happening, we just have to kind of like add the other two fingers that we were keeping off the stick, so the ring and middle finger, and nothing will change. So this exercise will kind of like help us to find a comfortable position or a correct position for how to hold a stick. And then we just have to add the other two fingers so that we basically then have already fixed the grip inside the hand. So this is a very good exercise that it's very useful, and it's been very useful for me to find a way to keep the stick as straight as possible inside my hand. Quick heads up, then we'll be right back. If you're studying this technique seriously, I've got full module, drills, and in-depth workouts on my site that go way beyond this. Use the coupon code for a special discount. Let's keep going. As you can see, a lot of the finger motion technique issue, it's on the grip, on how to hold the stick so that the stick works straight and our hand doesn't need to do a lot of adjustment and work, but it can just move freely, and the stick works with the rebound, okay, of on the surface. Because we don't want to do this. We don't want to raise the stick because like we don't have a lot of strength in the fingers. We're using a part of the body that it relies on the rebound. It relies on external forces, which is the rebound. The rebound has to feed the stick in a way that it pushes the stick back up, and we can simply just control it as much as possible, just going down. So once the stick is straight in our hand, we're already like 60-70% of the job is done, because that's the hardest part for a lot of people, is to just being able to keep the stick straight. If you can keep the stick straight and you can do this and you're just trying to speed this up or develop the next steps, you're already in a great situation, and it's already you're already beyond the development of the motion itself, of the technique itself, but you're more in an application part. And so, for example, one thing that happens sometimes is that while we're playing finger technique, we lose momentum. We lose, like, we're there and we start to tense up and everything falls apart. And this is because, as I just said, the finger technique relies so much on the rebound that if we think of closing the fingers when we're doing the motion, we will choke the rebound, because we're not allowing the stick to actually come back, and we're just choking it down, and we end up doing things like this and then rely on the wrist, and everything kind of like gets stuck because of tension. Instead, if we think of the motion opening the fingers and not closing it, what this will do is that it will allow the stick to bounce back. So this is a little bit like for ankle motion, shin and calf muscle discussion. If you're only pressing down using the calf, in this case it's like if you're only squeezing the fingers and you're just kind of like pressing down the stick. If you're also using the shin muscle and coming back and letting the beater come back, you can develop speed because you're developing the reaction of the motion, and so the beater can come back, and the faster you come back, the faster you can play the next strokes. Same thing happens here. The faster you open the fingers, the faster the stick will bounce, right? So developing the motion, thinking about the opening of the fingers rather than the closing, really helped me a lot. Also because it removed a lot of pressure to the thumb. Because by pressing down, we're creating tension, like the stroke is going all on the thumb, and instead opening the finger actually removes tension, right? Because we're thinking of opening. So a good exercise is to develop, even without the sticks, just this kind of like motion here, where we're just developing like the body motions, but we're giving a direction to the motion. We're not thinking of closing, but we're thinking of opening, right? And this is already a big part of the education. Like, our body needs to know how it should behave even without the external forces, because the external forces will be an amplification of whatever the body is doing, because it's just more pressure and more work for the body, right? While here, we don't have anything to deal with, so we can start developing the motion, and we might see that we have twitchings or weird motions, and so we have to smoothen up the motion by just, you know, starting at a comfortable speed and then slowly getting up the speed. We don't need to really, you know, put a metronome and do workouts for this, but it's already, if you're having issues, this is where I would start it from. Like, is my body able to do the motion? Oh no, it's already having issues. Then that's why everything else is not working, because the basic foundation, the motion itself is not working. So develop that. And for example, you can start by doing this type of motion. So you divide the thumb, you keep the thumb straight, and then you just open the fingers. But then really, because when we have the stick, the index is not going to move that much. This is also a good way of doing this motion, right? Just activating these three fingers, which is most likely what will happen. So we emulate the motion without the sticks. Then we can start working with the stick. And okay, so the French grip, because it relies on the rebound so much, if we're talking only fingers, right? Because we're talking fingers here. We're not talking about the wrist. We're not talking about this or this, but we're talking about this. So wrist is completely still. It's a technique, it's an approach that it's easier to use if you were already kind of like from fast to faster. Like, I wouldn't play single strokes like this. I would use more wrist, different grip or whatever, because it's too slow. It means that the stick has to travel a bigger distance between each stroke, and so it's uncomfortable because I feel it's barely in my hand. It's like almost falling off my hand. And so I would use the fingers already at a speed that it's a little bit more consistent. Right? So developing the finger motion is a great exercise and is a great workout, even if you don't only use fingers, because it gives more, you're educating the fingers to deal with the rebound and everything. And so it's still a very good thing to do, because it develops a better technique, a better control in your hands. So I would do this type of stuff no matter what grip and what technique I'm using, because fingers are always involved. The more you develop fingers, the better, you know, everything else is also going to work. Push pull, German grip, whatever. It's just a better feeling. You're creating more education and control, of course, inside the hand. But especially if you're using this technique to go faster, fast single strokes and things like that, this type of details will make a big difference when you're speeding up. And one thing that we will notice is that, yes, you can work on opening the fingers, but the faster you go, the more you will start putting pressure on the thumb. So a lot of people had encountered issues with the carpal tunnel in the wrist, and that happens when we are starting to stretch out the wrist, when we're starting to, because of the tension, we create tension and then we push through the tension. And you don't want to do that, because that leads to injuries. So you want to always keep the positions as natural as possible, remove as much pressure as possible by opening the fingers, but also you can use the thumb as a lever, right? So one thing that I feel helps is, instead of kind of like forcing the thumb, I try to find a little bit of support on the side, so that in this way my thumb is still in a pretty natural position, but I'm not feeling all the tension here by just relying on the thumb, but the thumb is also relying a little bit on the rest of the hand. And so it's helping me to keep this area relaxed, right? And so the important thing here is to avoid the tension, avoid doing this type of things with the thumb and forcing the thumb upward, but just having the thumb a little bit more in front than the index finger will help us to use the thumb as a lever, and then when we still feel a lot of pressure, we can put the thumb a little bit closer to the hand so that it has support to the hand instead of kind of like forcing it and creating tension because it's doing all the job on its own. Okay, so this is a little adjustment that I do when I'm starting to speed up. And then whenever I feel like there's a little bit too much tension, I kind of like, again, try to open the hand as much as possible, right? Or try to still kind of like concentrate on that area and relax it, and make sure I'm not ending up in a position where I'm stretching the wrist or like putting the wrist in a weird place, but it's in a natural position, as natural as possible. If I still feel, that I can't get over that, it means that I have to do workouts to increase the speed. And there is a specific way that we will talk about in this video to work on speeding up the techniques and developing speed on this technique or in general on drums. Okay, so stay with me and I'll show you a little bit later. Hey there, a quick one. If you're into what you're watching, you'll love the full lessons and workouts on my website. I cover all these topics and more. Use the coupon code to have a discount. All right, thanks. Back to the action. Okay, at this point that we are starting to get comfortable with our regular sticks, we can go back and use heavy sticks to kind of like make sure that everything is working correctly, like that we are doing the right things. Because with our regular sticks being lighter, like you might not feel some details. You might not feel you're creating a little bit of tension in certain areas, or the stick is moving in a weird way because it's light, and you're in a comfort zone. You can like kind of get away with it, but then as you start to speed up and as you start to do other things, you feel tension and you don't know what's happening. It's because you're not feeling and not paying attention to those details at that level. So using heavier sticks will kind of like bring those issues out and will force you to work with that on those details. So a good thing to do is to just kind of like bounce the stick. For sometimes you can spend 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Comfortable speed. You don't have to speed up. You don't have to play crazy dynamics. Just comfort. This will help you to consolidate the grip, the motion, and the technique. So this is the point. You can put a metronome at a comfortable speed, or you can do it without the metronome and just... You can do one hand at a time, unison, alternate it. Okay, and again, this will really make you feel if anything is wrong. You will feel it way more than with regular sticks, and so you can work on those details already at this level before going on in other steps and then finding the issues and then like getting stuck and you have to go back in other parts and you don't know exactly what's happening. This sticks will kind of like speed up that process because you feel comfortable with your regular sticks. You'll be like, okay, let me try with heavy sticks, see what the feeling is. Oh, something is happening. I feel a lot of tension in the thumb that I wasn't feeling with my regular stick. I shouldn't be feeling like this tension. Let me work on it and let me fix it. Okay, awesome. So once we understand how to hold the stick, how to deal with the rebound, and how to keep the stick inside our hand, and we can maybe start get comfortable speeding up this motion, the next step will be to get comfortable in the application part of this technique, right? So we want to make sure that we are not starting off with tension and with the wrong position, but that we land and the hand stays in the natural position as much as possible, and the stick, like we can control the stick, right? So a good thing to keep in mind here is when we're landing, have a kind of push-pull or open-close type of approach for the first strokes, right? So we want to kind of like make sure that as we land, we're controlling this rebound with the fingers, and we're not doing it with the wrist, with the arm, or choking it and then grabbing back or something like that. But having this open close, so when I land, I open my finger and then I isolate the wrist from there, and I just keep the stick going, right? So there's this a little push from the wrist, and then I keep the finger going. This gives you density of sound, a good impact. You're not starting off in a weird way, and every time you have to find your lock to continue the next strokes or not, and then there's tension, and then you get tired, and so on. But it's a consistent approach that every time we can, make sure that we land opening the fingers, and then we can control the rest. So a good exercise here is to play one bar of 8-note strokes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, just to get used to this landing situation. So we can start at a comfortable speed and then develop from there. But it's important to work on this specific step so that we don't develop all the motion, but then we cannot apply it because we tense up in the first strokes because we don't know how to land, and we don't train that part, and don't do specific exercises on this type of things, because these will be things that we will encounter when we're playing, and we don't have the time when we're jumping from one thing to the other to calculate the stick straight and the hand is in the right position. So you want to create those muscular memories here where you can just focus on that, and so doing this type of exercises is very good. So also here we can use heavy stick for the same reason. Like we can really feel with heavy sticks if like we're doing everything right, or if there's extra tension in the landing, and it will help us to make sure we're doing the right things and we're not helping the finger or helping the landing with the wrist, with the arm, but we're comfortable even with heavy sticks in landing, controlling, and stopping the stick whenever we want. So again, this is more like a correction part of the exercise. Once we start getting comfortable with it, then we increase the complexity. We use heavy sticks. We make sure the details are fine. If everything is working with these ones, chances are that the rest of the technique is working very well, because it means that even if you're dealing with a lot of weight, you can you're doing the right things. You can deal with that weight, and you can manage it using the right part of the hand in a comfortable way. The reason why we use heavy sticks and we don't use like a surface that doesn't have a lot of rebound, like we could do with wrist motion, for example, it's because the finger motion relies a lot on the rebound, as we just said. So for that reason, this is alternative options to surfaces that have no rebound. Hold up, 3 seconds, promise. Everything you're seeing here is just a taste. My website has full breakdowns, exercises, and structured workouts to master this. Use the coupon code for a discount while you're there. Now, back to the video. Okay, so from here, we can really start working on endurance and speed, okay? And as I was saying before, there is a specific way in which you want to train and practice speed and endurance, because you're going to want to push your limits. You want to go faster than what you can play, and you want to do it for longer periods of time. So you don't want to injure yourself, so a good way is to do this gradually. And I always use a stone killer approach to do this type of exercises. And I start with one hand at a time, and I play 1 bar of 8 notes, 1 bar of 16 notes, and I repeat that either 60 seconds or just 4 times or 8 times, depending on how much time I have. But I repeat it at least 4 times, and then I increase the 16 notes bars. Okay, so I keep 1 bar of 8 notes, and I start playing 2 bars of 16 notes. Then 1 bar of 8 notes, 3 bars of 16 notes, 1 bar of 8 notes, 4 bars of 16 notes, doing the repetitions, and then I change. I do left hand, so I work on a single hand, then I do unison, right? And then I do alternated. Why do I do this routine in this way? Because I want to focus on one hand, because the right hand will develop in one way, the left hand will develop in a different way. If we try to fix the left hand exactly in the same way we fix the right hand, it might not happen, because the left hand will have different issues, will have different feelings and different things. So the left hand will have to be developed on its own, in its own way, and the right hand will be developed in its own way. And the goal is to have them as similar and as close to one to the other as possible. But the path of development might be completely different. The right hand might need the heavy sticks to develop certain things, and the left hand might need a completely different path. And so working on one hand at a time, it's very useful for that reason. But then a good step is also to do unison exercises. Because when we do unison exercises, the brain is sending the same message at the same time to 2 different parts of the body. And how this works is that the brain sends a signal to the limbs, and the limbs send a feedback back to the brain, and through this process, the brain and the body kind of learn how to do things correctly. Okay? So it's not only about like, if you think about the motion, it's not enough. If you only do it without knowing what's happening, it might take a lifetime, or you might never get there, or it's like winning the lottery because you're not really concentrated. So instead, doing this consciously with concentration and fixing things as you're doing them, so paying attention to the feedback that the body is giving to us, that's the process, the best way to learn, what allows us to learn as fast as and in the most efficient way. Okay, so developing one hand at a time is good, but then unison, the brain is receiving 2 feedbacks at the same time from 2 different parts of the body. And so what usually happens is that the positive feedback on one side, it's going to be used on the other side, and so on. So if we do, sometimes we feel like the left hand is having a hard time, and we do unison, and it's easier. It's because the left hand is finding like support and is playing in reference, is emulated and copying what the right hand is doing. And so it becomes a guide for the left hand, or the weak hand finds support from the stronger hand, where everything is happening a little bit better already. Because you have to think, it's always your body, right? It's 2 different parts, but it's all interconnected. So if one part is working a little bit better, the other can get a lot of information out of it. And so you just kind of like do that in the unison part. Instead, the last part, the alternated part, is an application part, right? So because it's so fast, right, left, right, left, right, left, you don't have time to really focus on anything. And if you focus on the right hand, the left hand becomes an automation. If you're only focusing on the left hand, the right hand is becoming an automation. So it will be like practicing one hand at a time, but with a lot of other noise happening, because there's all the other motion. So in that, the alternate, it's usually like just whatever your hands have developed, you apply it there, and you feel like, oh, maybe you do one hand at a time, and you have one feeling. You do alternated hands, you have a different feeling. But also in the alternated section, the left hand or the weak hand will play in reference to the strong hand. So sometimes what happens is that when we're doing alternated hands, you feel much better than when you're doing single hand. Like you do alternated hands and everything is working fine, and then you play the weaker hand, the left hand, in my case, on its own, and it feels like uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good, and I can't play at the same speeds or whatever. But when I do alternated instead, I can. It's because of what I just explained, like the fast feedback that it's getting, like that it's happening in the body. It's helping the left hand or the weaker hand in that case, okay? So doing all these steps will be very helpful to allow us to speed up the learning process. So this is what I've always tried to do. It wasn't only creating a method or finding ways to learn things, but it was to learn things fast. How, like, I optimize every minute that I'm behind the kids, so try to understand how the brain works, how the brain and the body motor system works, all the communication and the connections, and so then designing exercises and a method in a way that takes advantage of that instead of working against our nature. So instead of just going on the drums and doing multiple things at the same time with no concentration, but really focus on each step and be like, okay, this is step one, this is step two, the body motions, and then starting with external forces, fix the grip, then make sure everything is working, and then from there start to apply it more and speed it up. Going back to the stone killer exercise, what we're doing here, the way we want to approach the stone killer will be of doing 1 bar slow, 1 bar fast, and then increasing the fast bars. And when we get to, let's say, 4 bars at that speed, we want to increase the speed of 5 or 10 BPMs and repeat the same routine, okay? And then we'll get to a point where we feel like the 4 bars, we'll start to have a hard time playing 4 bars. Let's say that 220, it's our limit. If we feel like 220, the 4th bar, we're starting to tensing up. It's our endurance stops there. What we want to do from there is we want to increase the speed even more. So if 220 was our limit, playing 4 bars at 220, we want to increase at 225 and get to 3 bars. So we play like less bars, but we still increase the speed. And then we want to play 230 and play up to 2 bars. And then 235 and play up to 1 bar. Okay? And even if we can even go 240 and play half of a bar, and we can have a bar and a half of rest. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is because to play at 240, you have to practice at 240. Practicing at 210 will not allow you to practice 240. Of course, if you practice at 230, it's closer to 240, so it will be easier to eventually get to 240. But still, to get comfortable and confident at that speed, you have to practice at that speed. So it's better to introduce that speed even for half a bar or 1 bar, and then give a bar of rest so that we're not overworking the muscles, but we're keeping it relaxed. Then just stop there and never get to the next speed, okay? Because then the goal is going to be, if 225, we could only play 3 bars, after a little bit we'll be able to play the 4th bar at 225, which means that 230, instead of only playing 2 bars, we'll eventually be able to play 3 bars. And so we go up in that way, and we're starting with short bursts at that speed, and then slowly increase the endurance, 1 bar, 2 bars, 3 bars at that speed, which allows us to go a little bit faster, and so on and so on. It's like a pyramid. I visualize a pyramid that it constantly expands so that we can get more comfortable with the next speed. And then of course we can repeat all of these exercises on the drums, okay? And we can also work on coordination. We can, you know, develop different motions, like use the finger technique on the ride, where we're just playing a backbeat, and things like this, right? Left hand lead, right hand lead. Like once we have the technique, we can really start to work and, you know, play with it. So you go into the creative aspect, and just it's another tool that you have. And one important aspect is, as we were saying before, being the finger technique, or a technique that relies a lot on the rebound, it might not be comfortable to use this on every surface. So using this on a floor tom or on very low tuned toms might not be the best technique to use. You might feel more comfortable in using this for fast single stroke rolls on the snare, or keeping tempo on the ride, or on a closed hi-hat with a lot of rebound. and things like this, or blast beats and whatever single stroke pattern we're working on. So when we transfer this on the drums, let's just keep in mind it might feel not as comfortable in using it on surfaces that don't have a lot of rebound. So you might want to tune the drums. If you really want to use this technique, you might want to tune the drums in a way that still the toms and the floor tom have a good rebound, so you can still work with this, or just use it on the surfaces and in the situations where you have a good rebound, so that will allow you to use this technique. Alright guys, we've reached the end of this episode. I really hope this video helps you develop your finger technique and brings more control and speed to your drumming. If you enjoyed this lesson and want to dive deeper into this topic, or if you have any other drumming questions, join me at jamespayndrums.com. There you'll find hundreds of in-depth videos on this and many other drumming related topics. Drills, exercises and interactive workouts that you can personalize so you can learn and practice at your own pace. I also host live streaming sessions where you can ask me questions live and I'll answer them directly so we can work together in real time. Plus, you'll be able to send me regular updates on your progress, which I'll personally review to help guide your development and tailor the training to you. Use the special coupon code when you sign up to get a discount on your membership. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.